Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian. Hope you're having a wonderful day today. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. In this video, I'm going to be telling you guys my 10 favorite books that I read in Q2 of 2025. Now, a couple things. First of all, this is specifically the books that I read in Q2. So this is not my top 10 so far of the year. These are from the months of April to June, what my 10 favorite books were that I read. Now you may be thinking, Ian, how many books did you read in that 3-month period? And I have an answer for you that I will find as soon as I'm done flipping through my reading journal. I have it written down here. One moment. Okay, I found it. 39. I read 39 books in that 3-month period. So these are my top 10 of those 39 books. It was a pretty good reading quarter overall. I had a very strong month in April. I read 22 books, and then May and June were much lighter. I read 10 and 7 books in those months. And overall, my reading quality was definitely lower than in Q1, but there are a few books on this list that I think have a really strong chance of making it to my year-end list. Before we jump into the rest of the video though, it would mean so much to me if you would like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. I post videos every week and I read all kinds of books, so I would love it if you stuck around. Additionally, leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite book is that you read in April, May, June. Thank you so much. Now let's jump into the top 10. My 10th favorite book that I read in Q2 of 2025 is Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. This is a brand new release and it is a horror novel, but it is one that has a lot to say. This book follows Cora Zhang, who is a Asian woman living in New York City. She is a cleanup person for like crime scenes and stuff like that. My light bulb just dimmed, so that's fun. But yeah, essentially she goes after there is a bloody crime scene or a biohazard area, and she's part of the cleanup crew. She goes to clean up a dead body situation and discovers some things at the crime scene that are a little bit alarming, and she soon starts connecting dots and discovering that there might just be a serial killer at work here. But there aren't a lot of answers and people don't seem too curious to figure out what is going on. My light bulb is going crazy. One moment, please. Okay, that's better, I think. But back to Cora Zhang. So aside from all that, this book takes place in the 2021-2022 time area, I guess. And so COVID is very prevalent in this novel, specifically regarding the Asian hate crimes that took place around COVID as a result of people blaming people from Asian countries for the coronavirus very unjustly. This book is a horror novel that is intense and disturbing at times, not only because of the horror elements specifically, but because of the dark things that people are willing to do because of their hatred and because of their prejudice and because of their assumptions. This is a really fantastic horror novel in that it has so much to say, and at the same time is also a very compelling horror story, mystery story, possibly serial killer story. I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it. This is the first book that I've read by this author. I know she primarily writes YA before this novel, but I hope that she continues writing adult horror because this was a really great novel. In 9th place, I have First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is a romance book, a contemporary romance book. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was very charming. It basically is a kind of retelling of Sleepless in Seattle. Essentially, this woman is having a hard time romantically, and her teenage daughter calls this hotline that is like a radio show, that is like a love, matchmaking kind of radio show or love advice radio show. The radio host is burnt out. He's having a hard time at work, but the teenage daughter basically tries to get him to help her mom find a good date. And it kind of leads into a bunch of stuff where she ends up being on the radio show, working with this guy, trying to get a good date and to help out her romantic life. So that's kind of the premise, but of course there's a romance going on here, so you can kind of connect some dots on your own. But what I loved about this was not only the heart and humor involved, but just the way that the adults acted like adults. So often when I read contemporary romance, I'm just frustrated by the lack of clear and I guess healthy communication, but there was a lot of that here. There was not a bunch of misunderstandings, not a bunch of people just assuming things and believing that rather than like trying to get to the bottom of things. People acted responsibly, like adults, thoughtfully, and I truly appreciated that in this novel. I just want people to act like adults in adult romances. So I thought it was really charming. I had a really good time with this. Certainly not as impactful as Bat Eater and Other Names for Corzang, but a book that just made me very happy. So definitely recommend it. I don't read a ton of contemporary romance, but this is one of my favorites for sure. In 8th place, I have Death Tax, which is book 4 of the fantastic urban fantasy series Debt Collection by Andrew Givler. I love this series. It is urban fantasy, but with a twist on that. It's not like mystery focused or anything. We have a character who accidentally gets frauded out of his soul by a demon. And he's trying to get it back, and it involves him delving into this fantastical world that exists in our own that people don't know about. Very fish out of water, very endearing main character. I really enjoyed it. I have a spoiler-free review for the series up to this point that I will leave linked down below. But if you like urban fantasy, if you like quirky, funny main characters and just absurd situations, give this series a try. It is so fun. In 7th place, we have Hart by Emily Habak. This is a really fascinating literary romance story. In this novel, we have a young married couple that have really just kind of started their lives together, and very shortly after that takes place, we find out that the husband has this condition where he is slowly mutating into a great white shark. In this world, that just happens. People get this disease or are genetically born with this thing where they will eventually mutate into some sort of animal that just exists in this world. And so it's not always sharks or fish. It can be a bird, it can be a mammal of some kind, but this woman's husband is slowly turning into a shark. This has to deal really with like the slow loss of a loved one, kind of talking about like illness and losing someone piece by piece before they are really unrecognizable, and the slow grieving process of that. But it's also a story about a woman and her mother, and her mother's life, and just the generational impacts of family trauma as well as grief and loss. This is a beautiful story. I thought it was very moving. I loved the romance of the heart of this. It's a very realistic one. It's not like a romance story, but it's a lost love story in some ways. And I thought that it was very creative and very well executed. Heart was a really good time, and I highly recommend it. I cannot wait to read whatever comes next from this author. My 6th favorite book of quarter 2 was Aftertaste. This book is by Daria Lavelle, and I had such a good time with this novel. This is a book that is so many different things. I have a spoiler-free review for this book down below if you'd like to check it out, but essentially this book is about a boy grown into a young man who can taste things from the afterlife. I've talked about this in a number of videos already, but this story is so interesting in that it has so many different components to it and so many impacts from different genres. Like, it's a little bit of contemporary, it's a little bit of horror, it's a little bit of fantasy, it's a little bit of romance, it's a lot of different things. And at the heart of the story is just this love for food and for cooking and for flavor and culture, and I thought that it was so engaging throughout the whole process. I never really knew where it was going to go. I certainly didn't know how the finale was going to play out, and it was a book that constantly engaged me and made me hungry. So if you want a book that really is a lot of different things, I think it can satisfy a lot of different desires as far as like for reading taste. So if you like fantasy, or if you like contemporary or romance or horror, give this a try and it just might surprise you. I really recommend Aftertaste by Daria Lavelle. My 5th favorite book of quarter 2 is The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff. This is a debut novel that follows a couple and their daughter, as well as secrets are unearthed and they have to face loss and addiction and trauma and so many different things. It's a multi-generational story spanning about 50 to 60 years, and I just was so impressed by the way that the author discussed addiction in this story, the way that it's not just one thing, it's not just one phase, it is a constant battle, and it's a constant changing thing in which people's emotions about it change, people's experiences with it change, and people's wins and losses change. It's not just a one-day battle, it is an everyday battle, and I loved seeing the lasting impacts of that addiction and trauma and loss on this family, on their different perspectives and experiences and lives. I thought this was a really beautiful novel, and it definitely didn't hurt that it takes place in my hometown, basically. I knew so many locations from the story, had such a good time with it. If you want to hear more of my thoughts, I have another review down below, but this is a fantastic novel and one that moved me deeply. I had such a great time reading The Bright Years, even though it was very emotional. I think this is a fantastic debut novel. My fourth favorite novel of quarter two is Gothic by Philip Fracassi, another horror novel here, and one that is just a wild time. In this story, we have an author who is kind of reaching a lull in his career. He has had success in the past, but now his publishers are not really very interested in what he has going on. He hasn't had a big hit in a while, and he's just kind of struggling creatively until his wife gifts him this very expensive antique desk, and suddenly he is filled with this intensity and passion for writing again, almost as if something is taking over him as he's starting to write. There may be something going on with this desk. We will find out, but this is a horror novel that truly shocked me at times, fully engaged me throughout the entire process, and was just so hard to put down. This story reminds me of The Shining in some ways, in that we follow a writer who is slowly descending into a sort of madness, and we are left to watch the consequences of that as they are played out amongst his loved ones. And I really enjoyed this. This is my favorite Philip Fracassi so far, probably maybe Boys in the Valley a little bit more. I don't know. He's a fantastic author, though. I have enjoyed everything that I've read from him, and I've now read 4 of his works. I'll read anything he writes, and Gothic was such a good time. If you like horror, if you like bloody craziness, give this book a try. It was wild. Okay, we are in my top 3 books of quarter 2, and at this point, all 3 of these have the full 5-star treatment. I love them all so dearly, and I could absolutely see them in my top books of 2025. My third favorite book of quarter 2 of 2025 is Shouet, and this book is by Claire Oshetsky. This is such a weird little novel, and I loved it so much. In some ways, it reminds me of Hart, but in a little bit more of a focused story, and one that delves into different relationships in a little bit of an interesting way and kind of dissects them a little bit more rather than just kind of seeing the consequences of the actions. It kind of pulls apart and views things in a little bit more of an obscure way, a little bit more of an ambiguous way, and in a way that was razor sharp at the same time. Essentially, in the story, we follow a woman who is pregnant, and she fully believes that she is carrying a baby owl rather than a human baby. It goes throughout the entirety of her pregnancy as well as into her being a mother. And this book was so strange, but so just hauntingly engaging. Watching as this woman tries to convince other people that she's carrying this baby owl, as she tries to be the mother to this baby owl or to this child that she views as a baby owl. There were so many times when I was questioning whether or not the woman was being fully reliable in her narration, or if the other characters were just being crazy. What is going on in this story? I think it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but ultimately I love the way that the author analyzes parenthood and the way that it changes you and kind of, I don't know, strips you of the layers. It takes you down to your most raw, to your most human, to your most vulnerable, and at the same time kind of makes you sacrifice a lot of things as you do that. It also has a lot to say about how we want the best for our children and how we want our children to just be themselves, but whether or not that's always a good thing. What's the line between letting a child be themselves and directing them towards a path that will be better for them and better for the people around them? It's a book that I've thought about constantly in my time since finishing it, and it's one that I think could only rise in my appreciation and in my list of favorites as the year goes on. I think it's an incredible novel. It's quite short as well, so if this is a book that sounds interesting to you, please check it out. It's very literary, very strange, very engaging. I highly enjoyed this book. I definitely recommend it. My second favorite book of quarter 2 is My Friends by Fredrik Backman. This is such a gorgeous novel. The writing in this just swept me away. I think that this is Fredrik Backman's most fantastic and moving novel to date, which is saying something because he wrote some incredible novels like A Man Called Uwe and Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer and Beartown and a bunch of other books. But My Friends is my favorite. I think that this book is so good. It is a coming-of-age story kind of told in two timelines. We have the story of this young girl who is, I think, 17 or 18, and at the start of the story, she goes to view this painting, and it is a very important painting to her, and she starts to discover a lot more about it and its creation as she faces these moments of coming of age and gets more involved with the lives of the people involved with this painting. That's part of the story, and then the other part is the story of this group of friends and how they ultimately bring about the creation of this painting. This is a story that is very moving. The writing is just so good. There were so many moments that I was just highlighting and wanting to remember and repeat in my brain that really moved me. I think that this is Fredrik Backman just showing off. I think he's really having a good time just like stretching his writing muscles on this novel. But additionally, there's so much heart. There are so many great characters. It is a very moving story, and just a real delight to read. It's very upsetting at times as well. I won't say it's like all sunshine and rainbows because it's not lots of sunshine though. It's very much a great summer novel, but it hurts. It freaking hurts sometimes. So I definitely recommend My Friends, but bring the tissues because it's quite the emotional one. Okay, my favorite read of Q2 of 2025 is sort of one book, but it's multiple books, and it is the Green Rider series by Kristen Britton, this being book 5, Mirror Sight, which I think is my favorite book of the series thus far. This book has completely taken over my life over the past like 2 months. So I was reading one of these a month, but in June, my wife got hooked on these books as well, and we ended up binging books 4, 5, 6, and part of 7 in 1 month. And these are not short books. And I can honestly say that this is one of my favorite series now, like top 10 series. I love it so much. It is a perfect blending of modern and classic fantasy. It has such wonderful characters that you just root for and fear for, and relationships that you want to see succeed, and magic that is so compelling and mysterious, and so many different facets to the world, politics, battles, crazy twists, and like so many different things, and it checks so many different boxes for me. I have a review planned for this video, but I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of say some of my thoughts on this at this point. I think that this is like Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb with much better pacing, not quite as gorgeous writing, but characters that are equally as lovable. So if you like Realm of the Elderling, give this a shot because it is so good. I definitely get some of the same vibes from it, and I connect to the characters in similar ways, but I think the pacing, like I said, is much more evenly spaced out in this series, because with Realm of the Elderling, I love those books dearly, but they very much have a slow pace that you have to really just sink into the story. With these, I find them immediately engaging. Even the books that some people consider slower, like book 3, I loved. So I highly recommend this series. It is so good. And that's my favorite reading experience of Q2, and will absolutely make my year-end list one way or another. So those are my top 10 reads of Q2 of 2025. Let me know if any of these books sound interesting to you. If you've read them, let me know if you enjoyed them as much as I did. I hope that you did, and if you didn't, that's totally okay. But I recommend all of these completely and totally. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the next video. Bye.